Through the Gates is produced under the support of the Coloradans for Responsible Wildlife Management to enhance, promote, and defend the North American model of wildlife conservation and responsible wildlife management. That's our mission. We're engaged in fighting at every level so that wildlife management remains science-based and conservation continues to work for our wildlife. To learn more and join the movement, visit SaveTheHuntColorado.com. The North American model of wildlife conservation is the greatest conservation model in the world. It's a success story that should be shared and celebrated because everybody is a part of it. So we got another episode of Through the Gates to Save the Hunt, and we are in Denver, Colorado, the day after the March 4th Parks and Wildlife Commission meeting. We're getting ready to go downstairs for the second day on March 5th, which the Colorado Parks and Wildlife Commission will be talking about the Senate Bill 003, which is the semi-automatic weapons certification program that CPW has been handed by the Colorado General Assembly, the legislature, and then we'll be talking about wolf compensation. But I am proud to say that we are here with Doug Chaisson, correct?
That's me.
Okay, with the Fur Institute of Canada. Doug came down from Canada to help us out on the agenda item yesterday, which should commission listen to on proposing the fur ban in the state of Colorado. We've been talking about this for the last, 6, 8, 10, 12, 15 weeks, but now it came to fruition, and we had a tremendous showing last week, today, from the sportsmen and women from the state of Colorado that came out in full force, roughly 400 of them, and about 40 or 50 of the animal rights extremists came as well. We had a hell of a turnout, but sadly enough, the commission voted to move the rulemaking process forward on that petition. And in all honesty, they didn't really have a clue of what they were actually doing or what they were trying to accomplish. So, Doug, give us a little bit of background of who you are, where you came from, and how the hell we got together.
Yeah, so I'm just a redneck kid from Cape Breton Island, Nova Scotia, Canada. Came up through politics for a while, and for a little while worked in the environmental space. You know, I like to confuse people. I worked for our national conservative government in Canada, then I worked for the World Wildlife Fund, now I work for the Fur Institute of Canada. Keep people guessing every time I move on. So now I'm executive director of the Fur Institute of Canada. We're Canada's national voice for the fur trade. We cover every different piece of the trade in Canada in some way, shape, or form. We represent trappers, we represent seal hunters, we represent fur farmers, we represent manufacturers, we represent skin dealers, we represent retailers, Indigenous governments, provincial and territorial governments are all members of our organization as well. And we also run the trap testing and certification program for the Government of Canada. Similar to here in the US, you have AFWA that runs the BMPs, the Best Management Practices. We do that, a similar role in Canada.
So how long have you been doing all of this combined?
All this combined, I mean, the Institute, I've been here almost 4 years now, and been, around the edges of sustainable use of wildlife issues back 15 years now.
When you're in Canada, you're doing similar things to what you were brought in here to do.
Yeah.
But have you ever seen anything like what we did yesterday?
No, I've never seen a performance like we got to witness yesterday. It, standing at the back of the room as the commission was deliberating, and there were a few of us there chatting at the back of the room, and we're like, I don't know what they're voting on, and I don't think they know what they're voting on. Mm-hmm. So at some point we were kind of just waiting. Okay, at some point the chair will step in, or someone will step in and say, okay, let's just take a minute and figure this out so that everyone's on the same page of this is what we're actually voting to do. And, that's the negative side of what I saw yesterday that I've never seen before. The positive side of what I saw yesterday that I've never seen before was the 400 sportsmen and women, outdoorsmen, agricultural producers, trappers, people that own fur businesses here in the state of Colorado, all being in that room and all supporting the continuation of trapping and the sale of fur here in Colorado. That was really impressive to me. We don't have something that really compares to the commission system in Canada. So
you're lucky.
I thank my lucky stars for that now that I've seen it in action. But when I go to testify at, say, a parliamentary committee in Ottawa, I'm testifying to 10 or 12 members of parliament, and there's no audience.
Right.
There's no one really, staff around the room. There might be a couple media in the room, but it's not a room full of a couple hundred people.
You don't have opposing sides typically to the point to where, everybody yesterday was dressed in red on their side, which was a very small segment of the entire population. And for anybody that hasn't paid attention or seen, they can go to any of the social posts and see just what sort of a showing and an outreach we had by individuals. But a pretty phenomenal feat that we were able to accomplish in the city and county of Denver, especially on the what voters here shot down in 2024 with Ordinance 308, which was constantly brought up yesterday about the will of the people, the will of the people, the will of the people. And do you have that will of the people process up there to the point to where we keep bragging about it, but then we criticize it when it doesn't go right?
No, so we don't have ballot initiative. Except for in incredibly rare cases. The only times that we've really had national referendums in our country was when certain provinces were trying to leave our country. We don't bring these kinds of issues to the voter. They'll be in a political party platform, or there'll be something that a candidate says, if I'm elected, I'm going to do X, Y, Z. But not you go into the ballot box and it's who are you going to vote for member of parliament, and then what do you think about sale of fur? We don't have that same level of kind of direct democracy, which at times, there's times I wish we had it. And there's certainly times where I'm thankful we don't. The reality being in the fur business, we generally represent a fairly small portion of the population. We may then have a much larger part of the population that is supportive of what we do, or at the very least doesn't want us to stop doing what we do. But we don't have that, we're not going to carry the day on just our people. Right.
When you walked in on night before last, I guess, when you walked in, and we had the first conversations. You got in late at night, and then we woke up yesterday morning, met downstairs. Things started to simmer a little bit, and then you started to see the momentum and the enthusiasm, and then you started to see people line up outside and post their signs, and everything was. People need to understand, for the most part, I think everything was very civil on both sides. But did you start to see some sort of a tension build as things were going throughout the course of the day?
I think over the course of the day, especially the arguments coming from the other side were quite repetitive. They're well practiced. I'll put it that way. I'll be generous about it. They're well practiced. And it's, some of the things they were saying about the North American model of wildlife conservation were just blatantly false.
Yes.
And so I was sitting there getting kind of itchy under my collar, being like, no, like that just isn't true. And if you repeat something enough times, it doesn't matter whether it's right or wrong or correct or not, people, it's going to start to needle its way into people's heads. And we saw that with some of the commissioners of, them repeating things that came from the floor from the other side. And it's just like, no, that's not true. Point of order, that's just wrong.
And there was nobody there to correct that. And when you're doing 1 minute testimony through this entire process, it becomes more and more apparent that maybe this was an intended outcome by specific commissioners that have carried the torch for this administration, which you're not necessarily familiar with, but you've heard about the animal rights extremism movement that's going through Colorado and Western United States as a whole. The discussion that went back and forth before they actually got to the agenda item after lunch, and you started to see, people from multiple sides, multiple perspectives and spectrums that were there for the fur ban petition, fur management conversation. Did you feel like that those individuals were misinformed as much as what we would consider the opposition to be misinformed?
Yeah, I think it kind of got to that point of as we were working our way through the agenda, and there were there were some of the staff briefing items and things, and I was like, yeah, I agree with everything they're saying.
Yeah.
Are the commissioners paying attention to what they're saying?
Because there was a hell of a presentation.
Yeah, and that was something that I found interesting about this entire conversation here in Colorado and with this petition. I'm used to having to defend foothold traps. I'm used to having to defend the $50 million that we've invested over the last 40 years in improving the humaneness of traps, whether that's footholds, whether that's body grip traps, whether that's snares. We've done a lot of work on snares in Canada in the last few years. I'm not used to having to defend trapping on a conservation basis.
Or just with cages, for that matter.
Yeah, or just with cages. But, a lot of, the fact that they were coming at us about the North American model of wildlife conservation, the anti-fur groups that I deal with in Canada would never even, dip their toe into that end of the conversation because they know they would get blown off the stage by everybody on our side. So that was something that I found a little bit confusing and unique about what's going on here is, they're saying that this is, trapping is putting fur-bearer populations at risk, which is the opposite of what the staff briefing said. They come up and say, the antis were coming up and saying, well, we don't have enough science. Like, we just had a 45-minute presentation on the science, and it's really impressive.
And on the stuff that we've done here in Colorado, but in the West as well, and in a state that since 1996, because of Amendment 14, has banned the utilization of all the tools that you mentioned, except for cages when it comes to avocational harvest or recreational take. Do you think that the commission, from your perspective, outsider coming in for a short period of time, you think the commission even understood all of the nuances of what the agency was trying to promote through that whole presentation?
No, I don't think so. I don't think they got it. And whether they didn't get it because they were choosing not to get it or they just didn't get it because they didn't get it, I'm not sure. And I think it probably varies from commissioner to commissioner. But that was something that was really, really weird to me. Is just like sitting there going, well, no, I know we're 2 hours into public testimony and it's hard to keep up with what everyone's saying. But, we had a half hour or 45 minutes or whatever from staff where they were talking about, no, this does not put at risk fur-bearer populations. The 5.8 and 4.2% harvest rates on species that most other jurisdictions set a harvest rate of 30%.
Right.
Like, it's not even that you're in the same ballpark.
No. And when it really gets down to it, their number is zero. They want 0%.
Exactly.
You could tell by the way that this doesn't affect hunting and trapping. They kept discussing moratoriums on hunting and trapping, and they kept saying restrictions and prohibitions on bag limits and so forth. That the petition itself had to do with the commercialization of fur-bearing parts and pieces, whether it's teeth, skulls, claws, or a variety of things. And I will say that as this comes out, the antis, the extremists, whatever you want to call them, they're going to be watching this stuff, and they're going to turn around and utilize what we put out. Obviously, we've got a broader audience, and that was obvious by yesterday. You get 400 and some odd sportsmen and around 40, 50 individuals wearing red, which is kind of weird because I don't know if they're wearing red for blood or they're wearing red because they're associated with the Republican Party. But I don't think that's the case. But depending on what rally they were at is where they might come up with. But looking at it from your perspective, even though you're biased, but from another country, you come in with a open mind and maybe wide eyes going, how the hell did I get myself into this position? Do you see any value in what my opposition is trying to bring to the table for science, for wildlife management, for perpetuating wildlife resources?
Right. I mean, I'm never going to say no to more resources for science and management of fur bearers. If that was what they were actually pushing for, I could say, you know what, I don't agree with you on 98% of things, but if you're saying we need to do better science, I'll be there with you. The best tool we have in fur bearer science are trappers. And, I absolutely want to be confident in saying that the fur harvest in whatever given jurisdiction we're talking about doesn't imperil the species of fur bearers that are present there. We've done a lot of work as trappers and as organizations to get away from the way we did things 150 years ago. And, there's been untold amounts of money invested into fur bearer science across North America. And there are great fur bearer biologists all across North America. But to come in and say, well, we need to do a 5-year moratorium on trapping while we figure out the science. Well, how are you going to figure out the science if you've got no trappers?
Well, and the flip side of that is it goes back to the cage side of it. 72% of all the fur that's harvested in the state of Colorado comes from hunters, not trappers. And that's because of the method of take restrictions that were imposed, as I mentioned. We run the Colorado Trappers and Predator Hunters Association auction, where we actually buy, sell, and trade the fur products of the fur-bearing species. The majority of that stuff comes in from out of state.
Right.
We've given that information to the commissioners before. We've argued that in front of different committees and coalitions and so forth. But when it really gets down to it, 0 is the number.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter the percentage of offtake. It doesn't matter the percentage of success. It doesn't matter the percentage of engagement. Their number is 0. You heard them say many, many, many times yesterday. And I want to emphasize, they said, when only 2% or only 5% of the state's population do this. Well, if that logic comes to fruition, across all lines, there's only about 5% of the entire population of the United States that engages in hunting. And those are the numbers I think that sportsmen and women need to pay particular attention to, because it's not so much that they think that you're taking too much, even though commissioners yesterday said that there needed to be an equitable balance of the ability to be able to take. It's not that you're taking too much, it's that you're taking any, because they wanted to make sure that, talking about bag limits, which didn't have anything to do with the petition, but it had to do with regulatory recommendation to try to diffuse some of the conversation about the petition, which they did because they spent a tremendous amount of time talking about frickin' bag limits.
Well, I was texting one of my members in Canada, and he's like, how are we doing? I was like, they're not even talking about our issue yet.
No.
They're talking about bag limits still.
Yeah.
And, that was that was another moment where I was kind of like, am I through the looking glass here? Like, there are some jurisdictions in Canada that do have particular limits on recovering populations of fur bearers. But we also have jurisdictions, thinking of Ontario in this case, where, it's not so much that you have a maximum, but you have a minimum. If you want to maintain your trap line, you have beaver quota, you must catch this many beavers on your line. So, I spend more time in jurisdictions with people going, we may have to bring down the quota number a little bit to make it easier for people to actually keep their trap lines in bad years or drought years, stuff like that, versus saying, let's put a bag limit on every species for any reason. And there was a great analogy, I think, from one of the staff yesterday, where he said, I can look out my window and see, talking about fur bearer populations, he goes, I can look out my window and see that I have a lawn. I don't have to go count every blade of grass to know that I have a lawn in front of my house.
And you don't look at the one yellow blade of grass with one little brown spot where your dog peed all the time and think that that's what you should treat the rest of the lawn as.
Exactly.
It's that one spot. And the hypocrisy that I see back and forth is that, and like you mentioned, Doug, if you say it enough, people start to believe it. Especially when they don't open the book, they don't do the homework, they don't do the research, they don't understand the logic of the education. And I think yesterday was a prime example of the total incompetency of an appointed board that then has the power to make the decisions on, as we spoke about, social science, or I think this is too much, or I think that he shouldn't be able to turn around and harvest more than this guy. What the hell does any of that side of things have to do with the management of fur-bearing species outside of people's agenda?
Well, and I would love to know what it is you've got going on here in Colorado, Dan, that all of these anti-fur people are so jealous of all the money that you guys are making off of fur here in Colorado.
Like the semi-loads that they express, we got dog sleds coming out of the high country with thousands of marten skins and so forth.
Like that was another thing where I was just like, I can't wrap my head around this. is so much of it centered on, well, people are having financial gain, and that it's, we gotta kind of cut the tall poppies here a little bit. And it's like, I don't know if you guys have seen fur checks lately.
Yeah.
I mean, there's good news in the fur market this year. Don't get me wrong. There's some bright spots, but we're not in 2013. We're not in the early 80s. It's not the day and age of producing huge amounts of fur for high prices. So, to put in place a bag limit of 15, and they were like, well, that's an arbitrary number. And I forget which commissioner, it was a really good point the commissioner made. He's like, well, what other number can we put that wouldn't also be arbitrary?
Well, that's the thing. Yeah. Because we went from an unlimited to 15, and that's too much.
Yeah.
Well, if 15 was too much and unlimited was just unacceptable, okay, so where do you go from there? I mean, do you go down to 5? Do you go down to 2? And we've heard that yesterday. Well, I would prefer to have 2. Okay, well, that's not really anything to do with science or the facts or the data, not to mention the fact that just because the average harvester on bobcats, for instance, is like 1.8 bobcats in the state of Colorado per person. And for those that can't figure that out, that doesn't mean you get 0.8 of a bobcat. That's just how it dissects down.
You get one bobcat and one littler bobcat.
And so then they'd go on the size side of things. Did you see that there was a constant connection or attempt to connect the small game regulations under the classification with fur-bearers? And I say that because the people that didn't watch, which they can go back and watch on the YouTube channel for Colorado Parks and Wildlife, Commissioner Touchton kept mentioning rabbits and marmots and squirrels. And did it seem to you like they were actually talking the same language?
Yeah, to me, it was a very kind of out of the blue. Every once in a while, they'd be like, but rabbits. And what do we do with rabbit skins? And what about marmots? And I'm like, what? Why are we talking about marmots?
Doesn't have anything to do with fur bearers.
Doesn't have anything to do with fur-bearers. We're not selling, maybe 120 years ago there was a market, but it's a fundamentally different conversation. May as well be talking about bighorn sheep. Mm-hmm. Like for in terms of the comparability of what we're actually talking about. And that was, and then they come back to the North American model and unlimited, they're like, well, unlimited wildlife markets. Mm-hmm. It's like, well, fundamentally there's a difference between the market for meat and the market for furs. Mm-hmm. And, in certain cases, a lot of the, big bag limits that were put in place as, game agencies started to enforce game laws early, in the early 20th century, it was, the bag limit is small enough that you don't have enough meat around to be running a black market for meat.
Right.
There's no black market for fur. Mm-hmm. We have a market for fur. You can go and look up the auction results. Yes. Like there's not this this fur cartel that's operating in the shadows. And
you heard that yesterday. Yeah. One gentleman talked about, got a little bit of a chuckle even from some commissioners that there were these guys, going from bush to bush to turn around and grab whatever and then sneak it out. And the regulated side of what we do in North America, Canada and the United States combined, is that cross-pollination of a resource that it's not like migratory waterfowl when it comes to that. But when you're arguing things on behalf of your stakeholders in Canada, do you see similar arguments that you have to provide to the forms of government up there, or is there any correlation to that at all?
Not really. I have very rarely had to defend fur harvesting on a conservation basis.
Really?
Very, very rarely. At times there will be things like we had a proposed listing under our Species at Risk Act, which is the equivalent to your Endangered Species Act, for ringed seal, which is a species of seal that's mostly harvested in the Arctic by Inuit, primarily for food purposes, but then they also use the skins. Mm-hmm. The CSIC, the committee of scientists that recommends species be uplisted, well, they made the recommendation that species be uplisted because of climate change. They're like, the only reason we are making this recommendation is they are ice-dependent seals. With climate change, ice conditions are getting worse, which is logical.
Right.
But we then, us, our partners in the governments of Northwest Territories and Nunavut and hunters organizations, hunters and trappers committees and hunters and trappers associations all went, but putting them on species at risk isn't going to help anything. If you want to fight climate change, let's go fight climate change. Right. Don't make it more difficult to sell these products and make us have to, put us in a position where we can't say seals aren't endangered in Canada because 60 years from now, the ice conditions may not be able to support the current population that they have. Mm-hmm. So, a lot of our conversations around furbearer populations and things like that are much more on that end of things of, is it climate change related? This is a species at the edge of its range? We have this conversation about American badger. 2 populations, I think it is, a badger in Canada are listed under a Species at Risk Act because we're at the extent of their range.
Right.
And as things change, we'll get more badgers and they will spread. Mm-hmm. But it's not that...
Or maybe not.
Or maybe not. They may not be able to find.
Depending on what it is.
But it's not that there's some kind of flaw in the population or some kind of particular vulnerability because of fur harvesting. Mm-hmm. So, when we have to talk about conservation, it's more on that end of things, not, the trappers are out there, someone said yesterday, stacking bodies.
Oh, yeah.
That's not something we typically have to defend to government decision makers anyway. There may be misinformed individuals in the general population. We have to we have a very strictly regulated harvest and there's reporting and, people go, okay, well, now that I understand a little bit better.
The provincial governments manage their populations of furbearers or any game species similar to what our states do. Yes. I mean, they have the final control, so to speak.
Yes.
Does the country itself, Canada, have any particular restrictions or prohibitions that override or supersede the state side when it comes to what we have here?
The only thing really would be the Species at Risk Act. That is kind of the federal hammer. But like I say, very, very rare cases, range extent or kind of island population of species that end up on that list that no one's harvesting anyway, right, because they're such a small, infrequent or small population. Where I grew up, there's a relict population of Canada lynx. There's a relic population of pine marten. No one is harvesting lynx or pine marten there because there's so few of them anyway. Mm-hmm. But that population likely will never get large enough to harvest in any real fashion because it's just in a small area of habitat on an island.
Right.
That's fundamentally different from the way it was 200 years ago when that was still all old growth forest that was really great habitat for them.
When you sat there realizing that we had 1 minute of testimony, which is what it's almost like a cordial acknowledgement or introduction in an elevator is what you got. Hi, my name is Doug, and I'm with the Fur Institute of Canada, and I'll see you later. That's kind of like what it was.
That was the joke I made to my wife was I will have enough time to say, hi, I'm Doug, I'm from Canada, this is a bad idea.
Yeah. And if you have these type of opportunities where you're at, what sort of format is there that's different than here when you get a chance to be able to interact? Yeah,
generally if I'm testifying to a parliamentary committee, I have 5-minute introductory remarks. I'll say the federal parliament, 5-minute introductory remarks. And then there will be, maybe 1 or 2 other people there from other organizations that are testifying at the same time. And, I get my 5 minutes, they get their 5 minutes. Next guy gets his 5 minutes. 3 of us are at the table or 2 of us are at the table. And then the members of parliament around the table can ask us questions. That was to me the biggest, missed opportunity in how things worked in that meeting is I'm sure there were people, and maybe I wasn't one of them, I'm sure there were people that testified yesterday that the commissioners would have liked to ask questions to.
Yes.
To go, you said this is a global trade. What does that actually mean?
Yes.
and get to tease out some of those details, which, when I'm testifying at parliamentary committees in Canada, I get that opportunity because they'll say, well, you said in your testimony, you said X, Y, Z, but you only had time to say a sentence or two on it. Can you expand on that for us? We'd really like to better understand that. And, I think that it's a difficult balance, I'm sure, for the commission between trying to hear from everyone and give everyone a fair shake, while at the same time, making sure that you can actually get through your day. And
which they didn't do a very good job.
Which they didn't do a good job of anyway.
They're on their own. I mean, the public comment part was the least of the worries when it came to delaying the conversation or just conflating the issue and confusing not only themselves but the attorney. When you look at the attorney, and he's got his face in his hands, and the director is sitting there. You look at staff sitting there, 5 experts. That Dallas May, Commissioner May, even acknowledged the fact that the level of expertise that was on that panel from CPW was probably second to none. I mean, these are some of the most experienced, renowned individuals that you're going to find in the Western United States. And just to see the frustration or the bewilderment or the body language of those panelists sitting there listening to these discussions come from the commission, and the questions that were given to the panelists, which you had Matt Eckert and Brian Dreher and Reed DeWalt and Ty Petersburg with the enforcement side, and then Mark Vieira, the carnivore Furbearer biologist manager. You could just see that it was like, what the hell did we get ourselves into? How did we get to this point of getting down these rabbit holes, which don't have anything to do with the petition conversations, and they keep circling back on this bag limit idea. And they stayed away from so much that had to do with the actual implementation of science-based proposals from the agency itself. And what I was concerned about was the petition that myself and the former carnivore biologist Jerry Abker that we filed. We knew it was going to be recommended for denial because the director had kicked that out. They had that 5-page submittal saying, "Oh, we're not going to recommend to push this forward." That was the least of the commission's concerns when it came to, and our petition had to do with science and data and collection. And we realized that the agency didn't need to go down some of those rabbit holes that we were requesting because they were recommending some things from their perspective on that actually incorporated a lot of what we were talking about. The commission didn't talk about that at all.
No.
At all. The science side of it was out the window. It was all about making sure that harvest and opportunity were thrown out the window, and that the bag limit was the primary concern about what their entire focus was on.
And even at one point, one of the commissioners said, I may be more inclined to vote differently on the petition to ban sale of fur if I could feel better about it because there's a bag limit. I walked out at that point. I was like, I gotta go. I mean, and then you had another commissioner, Dallas May, say on his property they do a complete coexistence. Commissioner Ty Jagobra mentioned the same thing, complete coexistence on their properties, but they weren't going to attempt to impose their beliefs or their perspectives on the entire state of Colorado because everything was different, and they were looking at not just the 6 million people in Colorado and not just the million sportsmen in Colorado, but the private and the public land side of it, the recreational opportunities, people's perspectives on things, maybe people's time in the field. They weren't going to impose their particular beliefs, even though this is what they've tried to adhere to on their properties as agriculture producers. Nobody else on that panel has the ability to have the experience, except Commissioner Jay Touchton, who runs the Southern Plains Land Trust, where they have no harvest whatsoever and where they introduced black-footed ferrets. And he even mentioned the fact that, well, we got a problem with stuff eating our ferrets, that the most endangered freaking mammal in North America. We've got the problem with other stuff eating our ferrets, but they didn't acknowledge the fact that they were going to go in and try to manage other animals to help the ferret population. Do you see, looking from your seat and watching those commissioners yesterday,
if you were going to write a column in a Canadian newspaper about your experience over the last 48 hours in the United States pertaining to this subject matter, what would you try to highlight and how would you try to convey that?
Yeah, I mean, if I was writing, and I likely will write something for our website, Truth About Fur, like I'm very tempted for the headline to be, guys, we have it better than we thought.
Yeah.
I have been to the other side.
Yeah.
I've seen how bad it can be.
Yeah.
And, not to make light of what is a serious situation, but, just the level of dysfunction in that room amongst decision makers was mind-boggling. Mm-hmm. And like you say, there were a couple of commissioners that very rightly were like, this is what I do, but I'm not going to impose that on others. And then there were other commissioners that in response to that said, well, I'm here to vote for my values.
Yeah, exactly.
And I was like, I don't think, I'm not super well read on the system. I don't think you are. I don't believe this is how that is supposed to work.
Yeah.
You are supposed to be informed by your values, but if you're just here to vote your values, to me that undermines the legitimacy and credibility of the commission, because it just means all that matters is who is in those seats, not the advice that's being put together by Colorado Parks and Wildlife, not the advice that's coming in from public testimony. It's just, well, what do I feel in my heart of hearts as one of the people sitting at the table? And that's concerning to me. And I mean, would it be less concerning to me if everybody around the table agreed with everything I have to say and their values aligned with my values? Well, no, fair enough. Yeah. But, we rely so much, and this is something that I hammer with a lot of my members, is especially in Canada where the vast majority of our trappers are commercial trappers and are putting fur into the market in some way, shape, or form, whether it's their...
And are dependent on that.
And are dependent on that income. That income makes up a reasonable portion of their family income. That fur check might be Christmas. It might not be the difference between putting food on the table or not, but it might be Christmas. Right. Or it might be, having a truck that can actually get up and down the road. That's
what I was going to say, putting a transmission in the truck.
Exactly.
When I was in Saskatchewan hunting whitetails, I mentioned with you in October, and listening to some of the phone calls that came in to the outfitter, who is a Furbearer and a trapper, that came in from his native customers up in the far north, and listening, hey, would you mind trying to front me some money before the season so I can get my stuff together, because I got some bills and I got this, and he became like the credit union of the North.
Oh, well, that's I mean, especially in remote northern communities, like whether they're First Nations communities, Inuit communities, or mixed communities. For a lot of communities, the fur trade today, still in 2026, is one of the major kind of outlets and inlets into the cash economy and into like the market economy. That the vast majority of what little economic activity there is in those communities is government, whether that's through government jobs or government support programs or what have you. We're talking about communities that in some cases will have like an unemployment rate of 30% and a labor participation rate of like 50. So, you only got half the people actually participating in the labor force, and then 30% of those are unemployed, and the vast majority of the people who are employed by the government. It's not a system that's built for success.
Right.
So to be able to get, $100 Martin, and if you're a trapper that is reliable and is putting up numbers every year, and you can work out an arrangement with a fur buyer or get an advance from the auction house, that can help make the difference and bridge you along to get a new snow machine, to get a new quad, to get a new whatever it is, new traps, whatever it is to keep. Well,
the one guy I listened to, he was talking on the phone. I mean, he was trying to get teeth for his wife, and he was trying to get a front on his season's catch. And the interesting thing about that whole conversation that I heard, this guy's 84 years old. Yeah. And he was still out doing the stuff, which was part of his economic income, that he was trying to get teeth for his wife. And I thought that was probably an eye-opening deal, because when I grew up here and have been doing this for over 50 years that I mentioned to the commission, the economic value was much broader than what it is now. Obviously, societal changes, demographics, people not being able to get in the beautiful mountains is easy because the urban sprawl used to be they could do something 10 miles out of town. Now it's 40 miles out of town, or maybe for a variety of reasons their lifestyles have changed. But the economic side was brought up yesterday from I think Cliff Carney with the Colorado Taxidermists Association about how this particular discussion on banning fur will not only just affect them, but affect the people that they deal with, the customers that they deal with, for a variety of reasons. We saw some people there from the Native American community. We saw some people from the outfitting community, some trappers and some hunters and some cowboy hat manufacturers and some the fishing industry and the fly fishing community. Do the Canadians, straight across the board, do you have this anti-sentiment there like you have here, or is it just formulating, or is it just so suppressed?
We have a few well-organized, well-connected anti-fur groups in Canada, but their approach is far more kind of the lawfare approach of we're going to go to court, or we're going to get some kind of legislative change that doesn't actually affect you but will end up affecting you. Or kind of the flip side to that is the more extremist, people that will go in wearing masks with megaphones into stores and harass staff. That's something we're seeing more and more across the industry. Like a couple months ago, the Fairmont hotel chain announced that they were not going to allow the sale of fur in their hotels anymore. And what's now the Fairmont hotel chain used to be the old Canadian Pacific hotels. They were the railway hotels. Those places were built by fur. The trains going past those hotels were going past those hotels with train cars full of fur. And the reason that they put in place this across their entire chain, and there were 3 or 4 different locations in Canada that had fur stores in the hotel, and they've now said when their leases expire, they won't renew them, was because of this handful of people that every weekend or every second weekend would go into the Empress Hotel in Victoria, BC, and cause a scene. And that was it. It wasn't as though there was some grand outpouring of public support or public opposition to fur. It was these 6 people or 8 people. And we see this when we do public opinion research in Canada. I noticed it here yesterday too, is there's a very severe demographic shift. Basically, we can draw a line at 45 years old. And if you're under that line, you will be far more open to buying fur, or open to people being able to buy fur. And if you're older than that, you will be far less likely to be open to people buying fur. And so many of us have in our head this image of older ladies in 3/4 length mink coats. But that's who buys fur. Right. But if I had 2 people walk up to me and someone said, you have to pick one of these 2 people to sell a fur coat to, and one was a 57-year-old woman and one was a 22-year-old woman, I'd talk to the 22-year-old woman. Really? Because by the science, by the public opinion research, the social science that we have, she will be far more open to buying a fur coat.
If you're looking to explore your opportunities to hunt out west, maybe try Colorado. If you're trying to get information about bighorn sheep, elk, deer, private land, public land, maybe it's everything that you want to do as far as pack-in trips. Maybe it's just having a pack trip decided for you, and then when you get there, you just hunt out of a drop camp. Make sure you check out the Colorado Outfitters Association. Colorado Outfitters Association here in the state of Colorado has got a numerous amount of outfitters that are members, and they can supply you with whatever you're looking to try to acquire and what you want to do for the hunt of a lifetime. For more information, check out the coloradooutfitters.org and make sure that you let them know that you heard about them with Through the Gates, and let them know that you're trying to continue to save the hunt in the state of Colorado. We always talk about supporting businesses that support our efforts to be able to save the hunt in Colorado. Well, the Colorado Shed Company in Penrose, Colorado, just outside Canyon City, is one of those partners. Colorado Shed has been building sheds in the state of Colorado for the last 10 years and is actually owned by sportsmen and women. They support the efforts of what the Coloradans for Responsible Wildlife Management has done, and they also support all the organizations that you're probably a member of. Whether you're looking for small modular type buildings, sheds for your property to store the extra hunting equipment, or maybe just to turn around and put that freezer in for all the meat that you've got, check out Colorado Sheds. They also do pole barns and can do custom manufacturing to whatever your heart desires. She sheds, man caves, it doesn't matter. Check out coloradosheds.com.
I saw that during the 127 campaign, where our target audience became the 18 to 44-year-old female within 25 miles east or west of the I-25 corridor, and the proof in the pudding is the results of those two elections. 17-point victory for us on Ordinance 308 and a 10-point victory statewide on Proposition 127. But that demographic of women helped sway the vote on that significantly. And the main reason was that we found was those individuals said, quit screwing with me. What I want to eat, what I want to wear, where I want to go, how I want to live, what I want to do with my kids. Quit screwing with me. Yeah. And it wasn't just about fur. It was the changing mentality that they saw on the government side of things and the extremist side of things that are way far to the left. Yeah. I mean, and we're talking about non-Republican women for the most part, that turned around and looked and said, look, I'm not over here, but I'm damn sure not over there. I'm here, and quit screwing with me here. Yeah. What you've seen since your involvement in Canada, if you had something to go home and tell your people about what is becoming not the norm, but more of a fringe group of protest and antagonistic ideologies, what would you go back and say, well, okay, this is what we need to prepare for, and this is how we need to get our troops engaged?
Yeah. I mean, I think that the biggest thing for me going back to Canada is going to be, we need to get ready for this kind of new line of attack. That we're kind of sitting pretty on trappers or conservationists, and we provide essential ecosystem services. And that is true. But we need to come up with more hard figures behind that to be able to demonstrate that to decision makers who may not be especially familiar. If this is the new angle that like, if this angle that the folks, CBD and others have brought, all the time zones on I've been going across on the last few days. I got like alarms going off at strange times.
When you flew here, you came from Ontario?
I came from Quebec. I came from Montreal.
So that's pretty
so
good.
I'd already picked up an hour, and then I picked up 2 more hours here.
Yeah. So
I think that's the third set of alarms.
So it's like 4 o'clock on Sunday for you now or something. So
and the exchange rate.
Yeah. It's like okay, where am I at? What am I doing right now?
Because I think that this is something that is it's not an issue for us, not an especially acute issue for us in Canada right now, but I want to make sure we don't give an inch, is people that are trying to drive a wedge between hunters and trappers. And a lot of the conversation in downstairs here yesterday, there was plenty of people wearing red shirts that came up and said, listen, I'm a hunter.
Oh yeah.
But and
I'd like to see their hunting history. I mean, that just like Samantha Miller with formerly Cats Aren't Trophies, now the Center for Biological Diversity. I'm a hunter and a fisherman. Yeah. I've had meat in my freezer for 20 years. Well, I bet it's not good after 20 years. That's what I was thinking. Just because you have it in there doesn't mean you're a hunter.
It's like it's still there?
Yeah, it's like now it's freeze-dried meat. But no, these people are not sportsmen and women. They are not supporters of a science-based wildlife management perspective to manage not just Colorado's resources, but the continent's resources. Yeah. They think that if they say that I'm one of you, but my perspective's different, they are not one of us.
No.
It's obvious.
Yeah. And I think that's I think that's the defense. And I think that we can defend effectively against it now that we know that it's coming. Because, there's tensions between every outdoor user, inherently just by virtue of being around.
Right.
Like, I often make the distinction of hunters and trappers get along until we're talking about hunting dogs during snare season. Mm-hmm. And then we don't get along. And then from there, you get foothold trappers versus snaremen. And then they don't get along. Yeah. And then, there are divisions within our movement that are not, cleavages that will never be fixed. Mm-hmm. Like, we don't have grand schisms in our movement. Mm-hmm. But I would just rather that they're not able to drip a little bit of water down into that crack, mm-hmm. because it doesn't look like much when it's just a little bit of water dripping into that crack. But then when it freezes and splits us apart. Yeah. And, we've done a lot of work in the last couple of years in Canada. We launched last year Canada's Wildlife Conservation Partners to try and bring more of the outdoors community under one collaborative project. So that, it was founded by Fur Institute of Canada, Safari Club International, Delta Waterfowl, and Wild Sheep Society of BC. We now have, I think, 25 different member organizations across the country, and it gives us an opportunity to be able to lend support mm-hmm. to each other. Of like, hey, I've got this issue in this province that I think actually will have some broader repercussions. We want to show that the outdoors community in Canada, the sportsmen, sportswomen community in Canada, is opposed to this. Mm-hmm. And, like I said off the top, I used to work in politics. And it's one thing, I spent a little while working for the Premier of Manitoba. I'd never been to Manitoba before when I took the job. And I walked into the province and was working for the Premier. And it's one thing when you get a letter from, if you're working for the Premier of Manitoba, you get a letter from the Manitoba Association of Concerned People. Right. But when you get the letter from the Manitoba Association of Concerned People, and then you get the letter from the Canadian Association of Concerned People, and then you get the letter co-signed by the Manitoba Association of Concerned People, the Canadian Association of Concerned People, and 35 other affiliated groups, you go, oh, we got to really pay attention to this now.
Yeah. It's a real deal.
And that letter goes out and it's on social media, and every one of them is reposting it and retweeting it and whatever. And all of a sudden, what started as like one letter from one organization that you could kind of go, we'll get to it, but it's not a big priority for us. But then you see something that is kind of ping-ponging around the broader community, and then bringing in social media and bringing in traditional media, because each one of these organizations has their own relationships with TV or radio or newspapers or whatever. And, all of a sudden your media clippings, emails start coming in hot and heavy on this issue that if you had just gotten that one letter, probably wouldn't have been a big problem. And, that's something we're working to do, based off of the model of America's Wildlife Conservation Partners here in the States, to emulate that with CWCP now. And, I'm signing on to letters on behalf of the Fur Institute of Canada about waterfowl hunting in national wildlife conservation areas. Mm-hmm. And people are like, well, why does the Fur Institute of Canada care about Parks Canada using lethal control from hunters on waterfowl populations? And I'm like, because if Parks Canada, that manages all of our national parks and historic sites, if Parks Canada says we no longer see lethal control as a legitimate tool to meet the conservation goals of our parks, well, that means that down the road, when we have a wolf issue in a park or we have a coyote issue in a park, just up the road from where I grew up was the site of a lethal coyote attack in a national park in 2009. And, rest assured, there was lethal control that was brought to bear against coyotes in that area. But if Parks Canada stops being able to use that tool, just because they're talking about waterfowl today doesn't mean they won't be talking about furbearers tomorrow. Mm-hmm. And, being able to communicate this broadly amongst a bunch of different groups of just because you sign on isn't saying this is your new most important issue. It's just saying you support your fellow member, your fellow partners, and what you see as important is something that I now see as important, and I'm lending my support to you, and then down the road, I'll come with something that I'm going to be looking for your support on. So, I think that the more we can do to steal a Clay Newcomism of guard the gate. We will be much. I had said this to your son Ethan yesterday. I said, like, I'd much rather come here and fight the antis here and help you guys beat them here, so that they never get to us.
Well, and that's part of this whole coalition mindset that has been well established, that we've been able to hang our hat on. I mean, you just go back several years, going back to 2019, that we defeated all of this at the commission 11-0, and then we defeated it again in 21, or 20 and 19, 20, and then they withdrew it in 21. Then they went to the General Assembly in 22, and we beat them there. And then we beat them at the ballots. And then after seeing the debacle yesterday of all the historical references of what has been accomplished, because everybody else had been relying on science. And the kicker is Commissioner Jay Touchton was on all of that other stuff that he was still here. And we turned around and didn't have the opportunity, lost our light, but we didn't have the opportunity to convince him that, hey, do you remember what you've been saying for the last 6 years or 7 years of your engagement?
Let me quote you from the last time that we talked about this.
And he voted differently before, but now they've got the commission stacked and they've got people in place because of Governor Polis, to where we don't take too much time, and we can always get on a Riverside a Zoom type setup for our studio, or we can get your ass back down here at some point in time. We were talking about that and trying to put you in a bag and bring you back. And you might think it's worthless for a minute of testimony, but there again, you mentioned you'd rather fight on our territory to help, so you don't have to turn around and fight on your territory. Because if we lose here, if we lose in Wisconsin, if we lose in Montana, we lose in Oregon, there's nobody there to turn around and come help you.
Exactly.
And I think that those are messages that we've tried to convey. And to start to wrap this conversation up, because we got a commission meeting we have this morning, from what you saw yesterday, from the first time that you started seeing people show up and how that started to build and how that was as well organized as what it could be, even though it was somewhat chaotic with the security and the registration and so forth, what positive takeaways do you have from early at 4:30 yesterday morning up until last night, that people listening to this sort of conversation could say, yeah, that's really something we should pay attention to, and we should start getting our asses in gear? And
I think that the biggest one, Dan, is what you were just, the coalition mindset of, we can put 400 people in a room. I think that oftentimes we kind of self-limit ourselves in our movement. We're like, well, we'll bring our 2 best guys, or we'll bring our 4 best guys, and that's what we need to do. It's like, no, we need to pack the room.
Yeah.
Like, that's where, again, from my time in politics, is like, I would rather 400 people in the room, and maybe the things that the 2 or 4 best guys have to say gets a little bit lost, over only having those 4, and the other side has 400 people in the room, because then it's completely lost.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So, I think that was and I was posting stuff all over Fur Institute social media of like, look at all these people. Mm-hmm. Like, look how many people are here. Mm-hmm. These are, and the vast majority, I'm sure that we outnumbered the other side 10-1.
Oh, easy.
Like, it was truly impressive. And I think that we often think, because we're stuck in the mindset of the early 2000s of, there's 5,000 people marching in the street saying we need to end the seal hunt. Mm-hmm. They'd have trouble putting together 5 people to do that today. Mm-hmm. We could put together 5,000 people.
Yeah.
I think that's the bigger shift that's going on out there, is that we can clearly see who they are now, and they can see who we are, and our people are more passionate. Our people have a stake in the game, and that we need to not be bashful about that. Like, we need to, And at the same time, like, we need to not be bashful about that within our own movement too. You know, we need to get on the horn to our buddies who are in our associations. Like, you need to come down here, figure it out. You know, we'll find a babysitter for your kids. We'll, you know, whatever it is you need done. Like, but we need you in this room for one day. Give us one day. That's something I think that's really powerful, and that's something I think that we can do a lot more in our movement to help spread that model and show how it can be done in more places.
I think too, while it might appear that there was a rejection or a dejection of yesterday's vote, it wasn't a vote to ban the sale of fur. It was a vote to move the rulemaking process forward, to have the conversation and put the onus back on the agency, which has already provided the science and the data, to start looking at the petition's validity or lack thereof on banning the sale of fur. We did not have a fur ban yesterday in the state of Colorado.
No.
We had a conversation that I think created many, many open door opportunities for litigation, maybe potential legislation, maybe a revamping of a variety of ways that some of these things are actually allowed to continue to, you know, I don't know whether that, and I'm not an attorney, whether that's a injunction or whether that's some sort of long drawn out class action lawsuit, whether you turn around and get the Fur Takers of America and the National Trappers Association, both of which I'm affiliated with, Congressional Sportsmen's Alliance, the Oregon Hunters Association. You put all those coalition resources together because, and I said this to 2 reporters last night. I did 4 interviews after the vote last night. I don't really care if they want to turn around and take away what we support. But if you're going to do that, do it. Quit beating around the bush. Quit acting like you know or you profess your wisdom and express what you're trying to get done in a manner that doesn't seem like you're trying to get it done. Just freaking do it.
Have the courage of your convictions to say, I want to end trapping in the state of Colorado.
Yes. I want to stop fur in the state of Colorado. I want to stop meat in the state of Colorado. I want to stop everything that's wildlife or animal related, just like what they're doing in Oregon. Those people are coming there with IP28 saying, we don't want you to harvest chickens. We don't want you to harvest cattle. We don't want you to go shoot deer and elk. No fishing, no trapping, no pest control, no nothing. That's what they at least say. Now, I don't agree with it. And I'm hoping to God the state of Oregon doesn't turn around and agree with that either, even though it looks like they're going to get enough on the ballot to get it on the ballot. But I just wish the commissioners, and I'll just put it bluntly because it's a podcast and it's not a newsreel, have the balls or the brains to turn around and take it away. That's what they need. But this diabolical conundrum that they create with this word salad BS, it's almost insulting. And I think that in the long run, it's going to play out for the benefit of all sportsmen and women, because if the agency is not going to support the science that was so meticulously presented, which has been worked on. It's not like they just came up with this. This is 50, 60 years of documentation. But with this new director that was appointed, this is her first commission meeting as a full-time director. She was an acting director. The denial letter that they gave, the recommendation for denial, and then the commission turns around and didn't even really ever go bullet point by bullet point for that. It was just like, they recommended denial, but I just have to go with my values.
I understand that there's science that was put together by professionals, but I have vibes.
And I've got a friend sitting over there, and I used to be the attorney for this animal rights organization, and that other attorney sitting on the commission, she is an attorney for these organizations. That's the disheartening part. That sportsmen and women, I think, and I don't care whether it's in Montana or Canada or New Hampshire or Oregon, like what we talked about. People need to pay attention, because if that's the way these votes are going to go with legislators and commissions, there's not a damn thing we can do to turn around and stop some of this stuff, no matter what you bring to them. If they have convictions that they want to stop it, than turn around and say, I want to stop it.
Yeah.
And I think that, I don't know, some statements that you could make of, if you had the opportunity to walk back in that room today to talk about the same subject matter, because it was part 2 of yesterday's agenda, what would you look to try to accomplish?
I mean, I think the thing that I would spell out more clearly for the commission is fur moves. Fur comes into Colorado, fur comes out of Colorado. Fur is manufactured into a product somewhere else, comes back into Colorado, or was manufactured here from skins that came from somewhere else. I think that there are commissioners around that table that think if they see through to the end of what that petition was looking for, that it ends fur in Colorado. But at least as far as I can see it, all it means is that because they're not getting rid of trapping.
No.
And the laws in Colorado don't apply in a neighboring state.
Or on the Department of Ag side of things.
Or on the Department of Ag
because
side
of
of things.
depredation and human health and safety.
Yeah. So either we end up with just a whole lot of people who all of a sudden have depredation permits that didn't have them, or just that fur gets sold somewhere else.
Well, yeah, they just take it out of state.
Yeah. That people, keep it in their fur shed and then take it to another state auction, send it to North Bay, wherever they want to take it, and sell it somewhere else. All you have accomplished is moving the little bit of economic activity associated with it out of the state.
Yes.
And the other thing I would try and make much more clear to them is, by the letter of what they voted for yesterday, they have voted for rulemaking on implementing a retail fur ban in the state of Colorado. They spent the entire time talking about basically limiting towards eliminating trapping, eliminating the financial incentive for trapping. At no point did anyone really talk about the fact that by limiting and restricting the sale of Furbearer skins and Furbearer parts, without having specified except for manufactured goods. I mean, they had an exemption for hand-tied flies, but you can't get the stuff to tie the flies with, and for hats. But, anybody that's selling fur vests and fur mitts and fur blankets and fur teddy bears, that's who got affected yesterday.
Yeah.
Most severely. And at no point did any commissioner actually bring that up. And, I mean, like I say, I'm not especially well read on the system here. I don't think that Colorado Parks and Wildlife Commission is in charge of retail in the state of Colorado.
No, and there was a lot of confusion there about, can we do this?
Yeah.
What is this? I mean, when the attorney gets involved at so many different levels and they have to have that back and forth discussion about you can, you can't, you should, you shouldn't, and then you see him with his face in his hands because they couldn't figure out what the hell he was trying to do, let alone what they were trying to say.
Yeah, like I had some sympathy for that guy yesterday. Because the amount of times where he's like, well, yeah, like you could do what you're talking about if we came up with a very particular way to maneuver around other statutes. And I mean, and I get it. It's not his job to say, no, don't do this.
Right, because he's the commission attorney.
Yeah, his job is to give them advice on what they're asking for, not to tell them what you're asking for is a bad idea.
So would you say, and starting to wind down, would you say that yesterday it wasn't a victory, but it wasn't a loss?
No.
If you looked and watched this from a YouTube perspective and weren't in the room, and you were to call me and say, Dan, I think you should do this, or Dan, you should have done that, what would be two of the major positives that you would say, and then two of the most glaring negatives that you would say? And this is something for us to consider because every state in the union is going to be having to deal with these things at some point in time. What would be the two positives and the two negatives that you would take away?
That's like if I was sitting at home and just watched this on YouTube and called you afterwards and said, Dan, you need to move to Canada. But no, like I would say, the biggest positive was the broad range of positions, opinions, and livelihoods that were represented on our side. Like we cut a wide swath of if there was something in there for any of those commissioners to pick up on. I don't think we had any real big misses of like, oh, I wish we had such and such represented. And the other positive that I think was really showed out throughout the entirety was there was consistency of message without everyone just reading, something I certainly noticed from the other side was just like the repeated, it's like you guys just wrote down your talking points and said them over and over again. Whereas, we had a message track, but not talking points.
Right.
And I think that makes it more organic and allows people to better represent themselves. And I mean, as someone who used to write 3 bullets and put them in the hands of a minister and say, you need to go say this, there are times where that's what you need to do. And there's times where you need to give people the latitude. And I think that
we
folks
did that
on our
very
side,
well.
Yeah, I think that folks on our side had latitude. Whereas I think even some of the commissioners were getting a little bit annoyed at the other side of just like, okay, like we get it. You're saying the same thing last guy.
Chair Reading, to give him the benefit of the doubt, I mean, he asked multiple times to eliminate the redundancy and repetitiveness, which fell on deaf ears on the other side, and he wasn't talking our side that much because there was a little bit of crossover in messaging, but not specific line by line bullet points of. They didn't even mix the order up. They just went straight down the line. It's like reading the menu for crying out loud. It's like, oh, and you need to. Oh, and you need to.
Yeah.
And it's hard for everybody to get their point across in 1 minute. Okay, so that's 2 of the positives. What's 2 of the negatives?
I mean, the negatives, I think, were. How can I put this? I think that one of the negatives that we had from areas for improvement, because it's not even really a negative in my mind, is I think that we needed to, and this is difficult because we don't know the order of speakers. I think that we could have tried to organize ourselves a bit better as we could see some of these things coming out from the other side to have someone go with a direct refutation of, what the person 3 speakers ago said is false. Here, according to CPW's website, is why that was false.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's difficult without like a speakers list.
Well, and you don't even know if you're going to get a chance to speak the way they have it set up. Everybody gets a blue sheet, then they go in there and shuffle it up like bingo numbers or something. And, you're sitting in there and all of a sudden, 15 seconds before you're supposed to be on the podium, it's like B46, and then the people are running up there trying to get their spot.
Yeah.
I think that's a good point. Yeah. How we change that is, change it, but become chair, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, and I mean, or it just takes like much more of like a war room approach of like there's a control room somewhere of, okay, here's who we know. Not that we need to know everybody who we've got on our side to speak, but we can go, oh, Doug hasn't gone yet. Doug, you need to make sure to really hammer XYZ when you get up, if you get up. And, I think that just the format makes that incredibly, incredibly difficult. But something we could at least try and improve on for the next time. The other negative is I think we need a matching color like they have. They are very fashionable with their red. But no, like I think honestly that to me
it wasn't flattering to some of the women though. So some of the women did not look good in red. I just gotta say,
I mean, neither do I. So that's
well, that's why you didn't wear red.
Exactly. But
you did have a fur tie though.
I did have a fur tie. That's that was one thing. I mean, in terms, I'm just gonna throw another positive. I was really happy by how many people wore fur.
Yeah.
That's something that we have been really pushing in our events we do in Canada. Like we did our lobby day for Day on the Hill, first week of February. We used to do our lobby day in May. It's just a terrible time to do a fur lobby day because either you're just not going to wear it or you're going to sweat to death. You're not going to be able to make it to the meetings because you're going to be on IV fluid. So we legitimately moved our lobby day to February, because it's a better time in the parliamentary cycle than May is, but also because we could have all of our people decked head to toe in fur.
Yeah.
And I think that was something else that really was a great positive. But no, in terms of the negatives, that really to me was the only kind of real area for improvement. And it's a area for improvement in a very kind of fluid, changing environment. So, not that it can be perfect.
You need to be able to pivot a little bit more nimble.
Yeah.
To kind of counter. And it used to be in the day when they weren't trying to suppress engagement, we used to have 3 minutes of testimony.
Right.
And then on occasion, then the county commissioners, elected officials, would get 5 minutes.
Okay.
On these type of things here, it's funny that they set the rules of engagement, and then they want to change the rules of engagement, and then they don't remember what the rules of engagement, and then they're not sure if they did the rules of engagement.
Yeah.
And we were way over on time on the agenda. The direction that this commission has taken things on many, many different levels over the course of the last 4 or 5 years has not only been non-complimentary, it's actually been obstruction-oriented, because it's not, they talk about democratic process. We're glad you're here to participate in the democratic process, but you only get 1 minute. Well, I can't pee in the men's urinal in 1 minute. I can't turn around and get through the security check in 1 minute.
Yeah.
But by God, that's the time you got to turn around and give your perspective.
Yeah.
And I'm sitting back there at the back, biting the bit when they were discussing about all the nuances of this when the panel was up there. And I'm thinking, how do you get through their heads, whether you're for or against this? How do you get through their heads that they keep throwing out this line of BS? They're spewing this to the panelists, and the panelists don't fully have the answer because it's not necessarily the science-based driven answer. And I don't know how to engage in that, but there again, I talk about all the other potential options that sportsmen and women have, and the ag community. And so I just, I appreciate you taking the time. More importantly, I appreciate you coming from Canada to sit and help the people in the state of Colorado and to give support, give testimony. It's cool to get to know you better.
Yeah. I'm a pretty cool guy. What can I say, Dan?
Well, I knew that in Nebraska when we met in September last year. You were one of the few that asked questions, and you were one of the few that had any money in the account to turn around and say, "Hey, look, we're here to turn around and try to help with the fight." The entire message of renewable resource and conservation when it comes to fur-bearing animals and the fur market itself. Any parting shots?
No, thanks for having me down here. It was a learning experience for me. Got a lot.
So you're going to pay me. So
here, it'll be in Canadian.
That's okay. I'll be back there next year. So,
but no, the parting shot is we're out there. That you guys aren't alone in this. There are other organizations out there. I've gotten more questions in the last couple of days from my board and from provincial trapper associations in Canada. Like, what's going on? Why are you going to Colorado? What's going on down there? The more we can do to help build more of these bridges and build a bigger coalition. And, there will be some issues, I'm sure, that we deal with that it's stay away. We do not want you to, tell us what you think behind closed doors. We don't want you to be seen being a part of this because we need to own this. But there will be other times where it's, ring the dinner bell. We need everybody coming in from the fields to come fight this.
Well, it's an international market, and the market needs to be protected, and the resource needs to be protected and conserved, and the management of that needs to be adhered to from the North American model standards that we all adhere to.
Yeah.
But educating the general public is part of it.
Yes. Educating
legislators are part of it. Trying to educate commissioners, like what you saw yesterday, is a major part of it in the United States.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to continuing to build the relationship and maybe help create some of those bridges for the gaps that maybe have had between FTA and NTA and the Canadians. There's a working relationship there, as you mentioned, like with the best management practices and what you guys do on your end. But it's important, if we're going to adhere to these practices from the tradition and the heritage and the scientific side of things, that we continually try to figure out a way to educate all aspects of what we were talking about. And that includes the participants in the audience too.
Yeah. And I think that's the thing we can't lose is we have a good story. We have a good story to tell, and we have good science that backs us up. So it's not even a case of we have to educate and say, well, you don't turn back to chapter 1 in that book. We don't want to talk about that. Is we have a story of improvement when it comes to fur-bearer management, when it comes to trapping. Like, we are consistently and permanently improving as time goes on. And we need, as you say, we need decision makers to understand that, and we need the general public to understand that. And that we're not, just, crazy hermits living in the woods coming down to rendezvous once a year. That's the only time of year we see other people. Like, that's a long time ago. And that there are, men trappers and women trappers and gay trappers and white trappers and indigenous trappers, Hispanic trappers. Like, we cover a lot more of society than I think the average person in the audience tonight, even the average person in the audience from our side, may completely understand. So the more we can find voices in our movement in, faces and places that will let decision makers relate a little bit better to what it is we're doing, that will go farther than any well-worded pamphlet can.
Yeah. Doug Chaisson.
It's you gotta go for the easiest version. It's French.
Okay.
So the problem is it's Acadian French. Like, we're the Cajuns that never made it to Louisiana. So like, I grew up English. So like, the French pronunciation of my name is Chaisson, but I grew up as a Chaisson.
Okay.
Just the anglicized version of the French name. So.
See, I have Gates, so I don't have to worry about that.
Yours is pretty straightforward.
It's not Gaisson. So, okay, Doug, we appreciate it. Fur Institute of Canada website.
Yeah, so if folks want to see more about what we do, our website's fur.ca. We also run truthaboutfur.com, which is mostly a blog website to keep people up to date on what's going on in the fur world, interesting stuff that's going on. We're on all the social media pages. We're on Instagram, Facebook anyway, and Twitter at Fur Institute of Canada. For folks outside of the US who are listening, we also run CanadianSealProducts.com if folks are interested in buying some seal products. And we also run a podcast with our friends over at Wild Origins Canada.
Okay.
Truth About Fur podcast. So once a month we do. It's mostly here's the news of the fur world podcast. So
appreciate your time. Appreciate you making the trip to come down here after shipping your stuff home that you couldn't bring down here.
That's a whole nother podcast in and of itself.
I think we're probably going to, our paths are going to cross.
Yeah.
We'll continue to work together, continue to build those alliances and coalitions and relationships. And if you see our building on fire down here, you know that we need some Canadian firefighters. So
we'll come with a bucket.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. Well, that's another episode of Through the Gates to Save the Hunt. We are in the hotel, getting ready to go back down to the commission meeting for the second day, March 5th. And we appreciate everybody's support that they gave us yesterday, March 4th. And if you showed up, don't think that this is over. Make sure you show up again, because it takes us all to make sure that we attempt to unite the fight to save the hunt.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of Through the Gates. For more content like this, make sure that you like, follow, and subscribe on all of our channels.